do you have a comment on Garcia?
Yeah, in my prayers, Steve let me know earlier today. I talked to Steven about an hour ago, actually, and he was in great spirits, and we've been texting back and forth since we talked on the phone about an hour ago. And told him to attack this thing with the same mindset that he's attacked everything, going back to when he was a player here and still is now as a human being, and told him, I got his back, and we all have his back, and just, praying hard for him right now.
What did you say about the fighter he is on the football field? Like you said, kind of he's going to take that fight into this battle.
Yeah, just that. I mean, when I called him, you don't know what to expect, but he was in, regular Steven Garcia mode when I talked to him earlier. Just that fighting mentality and toughness, and going to kick this thing's butt, and very convicted and determined, and that's who he is was as a player and is as a person.
The AFCA board voted, I think it was yesterday or today, about the 2014 playoff and eliminating conference championship games and the window for the season. I'm just curious what your thoughts on those recommendations are.
Yeah, I saw that. It's kind of news to me in some ways. Not that everything goes through us, but we discussed that a little bit in our last head coaches meetings back in February. There really isn't anything that we've discussed as head coaches within the SEC, either on a text message or in person at all since February. And then we've got meetings coming up in Destin here at the end of the month. So when I read it, I found out about like y'all did when I saw that last night. I don't know. We spent a lot of time in New Orleans talking about 12-team playoff, 16-team playoff, going back to a 14 playoff, 24 teams. I mean, we talked about it all. So that I'm kind of indifferent, I'm all for more access, but also don't want to lose the impact of the regular season in any way. Certainly agree with the proposal about finishing the season earlier. It's way too long. I love college football as much as anybody, and by the time you get to the end of January, I don't think really anybody's paying attention at that point. I mean, we're 3 weeks into the spring semester at that point. And then the championship games, I understand where people are coming from on them not having the impact that they used to have maybe in some ways, particularly if the playoff expands. But I love the conference championship game. I had a chance to, coach in one here at South Carolina. I had a chance to coach in one at Virginia Tech. I had a chance to coach in 3, I guess, at Oklahoma. And it's awesome being able to crown a champion, particularly in this league with what the SEC championship game means to this region and SEC fans and the city of Atlanta. So, it would be sad to see that go. I understand where people are coming from, but I need to, hear more and gather more and talk to more people before I give my opinion on it.
Shane, I'm sure you guys will talk about that in Destin. Can you share with us, if you're allowed to, some other topics that may come up while you guys are talking in Destin?
In Destin, they usually send us an agenda about a week or two out. So right now, I don't know, just guessing it'll be more talk about the recruiting calendar, the yearly calendar. What does spring practice look like? What does the summers look like? The recruiting model. I think there's been some talk about potentially Clark Lee is the AFC representative for us. So I know they had some meetings last week, and Clark on our head coaches group text was texting us about some recruiting calendar things that would impact head coaches and what the year looks like for us. He didn't text us anything about the playoff or championship games or all that, not that he would have or whatnot, but those are some things I would guess. Transfer portal, same old stuff. Transfer portal, rev share, NIL, calendar, roster numbers, all that stuff, all the issues that we're all dealing with right now. They'll be talking about in SEC meetings and ACC meetings and Big 12 and Big 10 this month.
You kind of mentioned that the season goes way too long, and honestly, I agree.
Thank you.
Do you think there's ever going to be a point where maybe the season ends and then the transfer portal opens up afterwards, like the whole season's over, championship game, and then you get into kind of like how college basketball does it now?
Yeah, I know there's a lot of people that talk that way. Like me personally, or there's a lot of people that have say that's the best model. I don't necessarily agree with that. Like me personally, if you're saying a spring portal, like a portal that would be later in the spring, I'm not necessarily a fan of that, because if somebody wants to transfer, if somebody wants to transfer, I don't want to have to, babysit them basically for 5 months until the portal opens. Like, a guy wants to leave the program and is planning on leaving the program. Why do I want to keep him in my locker room for the next 3 or 4 months until a spring portal opens up? I understand people say, well, the NFL does, the season ends, then you have the draft, that would be like recruiting, then you have free agency, that's like the portal, and I get all that, and maybe I'll come around to that. But if that makes sense where I'm coming from, like if I know that Jack Veltry's has got an agent that's gonna, leveraging us for a lot of money that we're not gonna pay, but Jack's just hanging around Columbia until the portal opens, I don't want Jack in my locker room during that time period. So I know there's a lot about that. I can see it maybe coming around to that, but as where I am right now in 2026, I like it the way it is, that at least I know who's going to be on our team when the spring semester opens. And December stinks, January stinks, it's hard whether you're playing in the playoffs or not, but at least when the spring semester opens in January, you're like, okay, I know who the team is and you can get to work. Do I think there could be some things better in December and January to get to that point? Absolutely. And there's some things I think we will address and try and get better, but I'm not a fan of that. But who knows? The way things are changing right now, I may come around to it at some point in the next year or two.
Shane, you got some lag time. The players have some lag time. Anybody have any kind of cleanup medical procedures or anything like that?
No,
Practice?
we haven't. Nothing. They're doing exams right now. A lot of our guys, finish exams and are back home for a couple of weeks. Really didn't have anything. When we came through the spring healthy. Still got the guys that are recovering from procedures they've had, but nothing, David, since the end of spring practice, and nothing on the horizon right now either.
Obviously, with redshirt, that was a major change, but it does seem, things we're mentioning, rules are changing, there's a lot kind of going on. When it comes to recruiting, you talked about, I think, like a survey you did to kind of have people say what went well or what they didn't like. Like, how different has recruiting had to change in the last year? Is the approach overall still the same, even if conversations are different?
I think the approach is still the same in what I'm doing and how I'm doing it and what we're talking about and the relationship piece of it. We just had an official visit weekend last weekend and with 11 families that came in with prospects and it was awesome. We did the same thing that we always did and had a lot of great fellowship and fun, and it was a great weekend. I think one thing that's certainly changed really in the last year or two is with a lot of these players that you're recruiting, let's face it, there's a financial element too, and we're not always gonna, we've got to be smart about how we're spending money and whatnot. So I think there's more conversations happening on the front end where you're having conversations with agents, whoever it might be, in regards to a prospect that you're recruiting, that they may just have this number in mind that they expect or want, which a school just absolutely isn't going to do. And if that's the case, it's almost like well, let's not waste each other's time, because if we're not gonna do that, and if that's what you're looking for, then this probably isn't the place for you. So I think that has changed maybe in the last year or two, that you wouldn't have had those conversations previously. But outside of that, not really. I mean, we still approach it the same way. We have those conversations, but my conversations with the families is, I get it, money's a factor, but if it's the reason you're coming here, then don't come. And I had that conversation with all the families last week when they were here on their official visit, and that'll never change.
Do you think there should be a cap on, say, the team-wise or by position?
Well, technically there is. So yeah, I mean, we have a cap. Now, whether that cap is real and enforced and all that, there is a cap. But that's a lot that I could go into that one as well. So we have a cap right now. I'll leave it at that.
Obviously, the season will be here before you know it. The players have the time off. How do you pace yourself and the coaching staff before the true ramp up starts for this team?
Yeah, I think you got to be smart about it, because you can certainly wear yourself out before the season gets here. It's kind of cyclical. May, from a coaching standpoint, is pretty slow. there's recruiting stuff going on, like I talked about. The assistant coaches are on the road periodically through the month of May. I'm doing these, and then some other, things with donors and fundraising and things like that. But May's a time to kind of, catch your breath and get ready for June, because June's a all-out grind with camps. Your team is back, recruiting weekends, recruits visiting every day. So June is non-stop the whole month. And then there's a little window there in July, a few weeks where I want the coaches to be able to, get away and catch their breath, and players be able to get away from the coaches a little bit. And then when you start back in August, everybody's ready to rock and roll. But, it's every day because of this. You're never off and you're always going, but at least being able to, kind of catch your breath and have some balance and get away is important for everybody.
How have these events, sorry,
No, you're good.
how have these events over the past 2 weeks really helped to disconnect and, connect with all the fans and see them at this point in the year?
Yeah, am I supposed to look down? Or
You can look at them, I'm not your,
Okay,
I'm
gotcha.
just the mic holder.
All right, gotcha. These events have been awesome. Love being able to get out and see the awesome Gamecock fans everywhere. We were in Spartanburg, we were in Charleston. I know our assistant coaches are out speaking at some of these this year too, at different Gamecock clubs. But it's a reminder of everything that's great about college athletics. You hear about a lot of the bad, but coming to these events and seeing the passion of the fan base and hearing their stories and how much they love Gamecock athletics is a great perspective and a great reminder of how blessed I am to be in this position and the awesome fans that we have here at Carolina.
I feel like with the portal's popularity, it's kind of rare to see a coach and a quarterback do it for 3 seasons. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, you talk a lot and I've asked you a lot about how you've made kind of Norris grow. I'm curious, that relationship you have with him, how have he kind of like taught you things? What have you learned from him, with that?
Yeah, no, it is rare when you look around the country. There's very few, I guess, Stockton at Georgia and Klubnik at Clemson in the last few years come to mind, but there's not many because there's so many guys that quarterback comes in for 1 year and then that's it. So it's a real advantage to have a quarterback that's been in your program now for 4 years and going into his 3rd season as the starter. But he's been great. He's grown since the end of the season. I've enjoyed, just being around him, and will continue to, just because of his perspective and, the way that he, handles himself, and with everything, the limelight on him and who he is, particularly in this state. He's, the same person, loves to play golf, awesome girlfriend. My kids see him around town getting ice cream, at night, and that's just kind of who he is. He was that way a few years ago, and he's still that way now, and I appreciate that too, that he hasn't let everything just kind of go to his head. I know he's, I think he's playing in the Pro-Am next week for the golf tournament that's coming here, so he's excited about that. I know he's been grinding and working hard for that too. But he's just, he's just a great reminder of what's right about college athletics and how he handles himself, and it's the same guy day in, day out.